Okay, and who's missing?
It's my girlfriend, and she does live with me, and she's never done this before.
What's her name?
Nicole VanderHeyden.
When she attempts to go into her house and leave your vehicle, that's when your mood changes, right?
No, sir.
That's when things get aggressive, don't they?
Not at all.
That's when Nikki gets slammed on the ground repeatedly when she's trying to run toward her house.
None of that is true.
She was a very good mother. That's one part I liked a lot about her, was just how caring and, she did everything that the kids needed and taught them well.
At that point, did you know who that individual was?
Never seen him before in my life.
Do you know who that individual is now?
Now I do. It's that Dietrich.
A young couple decides to blow off some steam at a fun-filled concert.
Everyone was having a good time?
Yeah.
No drama?
Yep.
Okay.
The girlfriend storms out after catching her boyfriend flirting. The next morning, she's found brutally murdered. Her boyfriend, desperate to end the relationship, becomes the prime suspect. But just when the case seems closed, a new suspect emerges.
During that time, I was in contact with Kevin Scott, and he was advising me of this consistent unknown male Y profile that was coming up on the items that we were sending to the lab.
A man with a violent past, claiming he was coerced into it by the boyfriend himself. This is the story of Nicole VanderHeyden. Welcome to our channel, where we dig deep into the most mystifying cases. If you're fascinated by true crime, you're in the right place. Join us as we unravel the twists and turns of Nicole VanderHeyden's murder investigation. Watch the full story, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more gripping true crime content. Together, let's uncover the truth and demand justice. Let's start from the day it all happened, the 19th of May, 2019. 34-year-old Doug Dietrich from Green Bay, Wisconsin was right in the middle of chaotic new parenthood after he and 31-year-old Nicole VanderHeyden had their first child together just 6 months earlier.
How long has she resided here?
Since November. Well, longer than that, actually. But
yeah. I was going to say,
9
right
months.
before the baby was born. Yeah.
9 months.
Luckily for Doug, Nikki was no stranger to the demands of parenthood.
She has 2 other children.
Okay.
She already had 2 children from a previous marriage, so whatever nerves Doug might have felt as a new dad were quickly eased by Nikki's experience. Doug and Nikki had only been dating for about a month in 2015 when she found out she was pregnant.
You know what, we didn't know each other that long before. We went out, I'd say, twice a week. We usually go out on the weekends. There's like a handful of times that I went out without her, and I don't think she might have went out once without me, but she would drink fast. She's putting down either a beer or drink in half the amount of time I drink it. And
it was a big surprise, but both of them were excited about the news, and a few months later, they decided to move in together. Doug came from a family of builders in the Green Bay area, and he worked for his father's contracting business. In fact, they even built the house that became Doug and Nikki's family home.
I'm self-employed. I work through my parents at Dietrich Builders.
Oh, okay.
I haven't been working that much here recently, but...
How come you haven't been working much?
Since Dylan's been born, I've been kind of in the funk, and I have some issues with working with family, too.
Okay.
It's up and down, and
yeah.
It's been like that. I've been working with them for the whole life, pretty much, and the day-to-day things are it's hell sometimes.
Yeah.
I work with my dad and my grandpa.
Oh, wow.
And my brother and my uncle, so...
Nikki, also from the area, had spent the last 6 years working as a substitute teacher. Even though she had an education degree, Nikki preferred substituting because it allowed her to spend more time with her 3 kids.
She's a substitute teacher, but she hasn't worked much here since Dylan's been born.
Where does she teach at?
Since I've been part-time.
Yeah, just part-time.
But even the most devoted mother needs a break now and then. Time to recharge, have some fun, and spend quality time with her partner. On May 19th, it seemed Doug and Nikki had found their opportunity. Doug's friend Greg invited them to join him and some old school friends for a night out at a local sports bar. They were going to watch the 80s glam metal band Steel Panther. Nikki's older children were already scheduled to spend the weekend with their father, so all they needed was someone to watch the baby. Nikki's mother agreed to stay until 11 p.m., and after that, Nikki's friend Dallas would take over until they came home.
When you left last night here, who was here with the baby?
Her friend, Dallas.
Okay.
Was babysitting Dylan.
Okay. Dylan. Okay, so what time did you guys actually go out?
8 o'clock is when we there. She came out with just me. I drove over there. My car's still there.
Dallas was Nikki's good friend.
Did sometimes you care for her child?
Yes.
Were you aware that she had children?
Yes.
And did you know them?
Yes.
Did you babysit all three or?
Just Dylan.
Okay, and Dylan would be her youngest, is that correct?
Correct.
Everything seemed to be falling into place for one of Doug and Nikki's first nights out since the baby was born.
Let's start with, what time did you and Nikki leave the house last night?
I'm like 7:30, quarter to 8, I'm thinking 10:30.
And where did you go?
We went to McDonald's, and then we went through the drive-thru quick, and then went to the watering hole.
Okay.
For the show. We had to wait. I think the show started actually at 7, but we couldn't get there, so we had to wait for her mom to show up for a sitter.
Mm-hmm.
And she showed up a little around 7-ish, 7:15.
Okay.
So we left after that.
You didn't go anywhere else in between? You didn't stop at anyone else's house?
Nope. Went straight. We were finishing up our McDonald's as we went into the parking.
After Doug and Nikki found his friends at the bar, the night kicked off just as they'd hoped. They had a few beers, danced, and even took some selfies with the band playing in the background. Steel Panther's energy was contagious, and the group was having a great time. When the show finally ended, nobody was ready to call it a night. They all decided to keep the party going by heading to another bar.
What you guys saw, everyone was having a good time?
Yeah.
No drama?
Yep.
Okay.
But just as they were about to leave, Nikki realized Doug hadn't come back from the bathroom.
When the concert was done, there was a lot of people. It was crowded. We were kind of sitting there deciding where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do after the concert, because we knew we didn't want to stay there. And we didn't know exactly where Doug was. We briefly looked. It was just so crowded. We decided to go and thought we would just text him and let him know where we went.
In the car ride, did you have the chance to observe Nikki's demeanor?
Yes.
Can you describe that for us?
She was drunk, feeling good.
The group was gathering their things, ready to move to the next spot, the sardine can. Doug's friend Erin noticed Nikki looking around for Doug and could tell she didn't want to be left behind.
He said she was upset and then just like stormed off south on Maple there. And
So Erin is telling you this on the telephone, or he's texting you this?
He was texting me this.
Erin offered her a ride to the sardine can. Nikki hesitated, sending Doug a series of texts to figure out where he was. But after waiting a bit with no response, she decided to go with Erin and the others, figuring Doug would catch up later.
What time do you leave the watering hole then?
I didn't leave. I don't know. I'm guessing around midnight-ish. A little after. I was pretty intoxicated at that point, and Greg was driving. He was sober, so he was driving.
So let's go.
I'm guessing, 12:30 somewhere.
What time did the concert end?
I'd say 11:30 maybe, 11:30.
And then did the whole group did you guys have a plan where you all were going to go?
We kind of did, yeah. We had talked about everybody right after the show, I went and got in line for the bathroom. It was a long line, and then I couldn't find anybody. I talked to Greg, and then I ended up calling Nikki and saying she was in the car with my friends already. She said Crystal and Aaron and Darcy and whoever else was in that car.
Okay.
So they're already, I was still in the watering hole. Actually, this is up where I was up towards the bar part, because I don't know if you know that place. It's real big.
I haven't been in there in like forever.
It's a real big volleyball. It's extended. They have like a center room, and they're checking wristbands everywhere, and so it takes a while to get through. So I didn't run out there. I said, okay, I'll meet you at the sardine can. So, and then when Greg and I were walking out, we ended up running into some good high school friends that we hadn't seen in a long time, and got chit-chatting with them probably 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes. And so I don't know exactly what time we left.
But before you left and before you ran into those high school friends, you spoke to Nikki on the phone?
Yep.
Okay. And she was already...
She was in the car.
Said she was in the car with the other friends? And
yep. And headed towards going to the sardine camp.
Okay.
As it turned out, Doug and his friend Greg had bumped into another group of friends from school they hadn't seen in years.
We ended up talking to Andrea and her husband for some period of time. I believe Doug bought a round of shots for all of us, and I told him I didn't really want to have the shot. I took that one. We were kind of losing track of time. I believe I received a text at some point from one of our friends that was at the sardine can saying, "Where are you guys? Why are you not here yet?" And I told Doug, you know, we need to leave. You know, I think, you know, it's been longer than we thought it was.
They got caught up in conversation, musing over about old times.
So, had you just seen him talking with someone with Greg earlier, or is that something that you thought you heard later?
Between the bands, there was like a smoking section, and I saw them talking with a girl from our class.
And did you know that girl also?
Yes, I did.
And Greg was also present?
He was.
And they were just talking?
Yes.
Doug texted Nikki, letting her know he'd catch up with her at the next bar. He didn't think much of it at the time, but it was clear something had gone wrong. A little while later, he checked his phone and saw a string of missed messages from Nikki. But these weren't just casual texts. They were filled with frustration and anger.
What was she mad about?
I don't know. She said I was talking to a girl who I have no idea.
Were you guys drinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Nikki was demanding to know where he was, and her words were sharp, laced with accusations.
And she was upset at me saying that I was talking to a girl and whatever, and...
What did she say?
Who are you talking to? I said, I don't know if I even told her it was Katie or whatever. There's a lot of people and so commotion in there, so it was a relatively short conversation. But, you know, I said, just quit being silly. It would be, you know, I'm going to be there.
You were with Greg?
Yep.
She was convinced Doug was up to something shady, asking who he was with and why he was avoiding her. The tone of her messages caught Doug off guard. He was just catching up with old friends. Why was Nikki so upset?
Do you recall getting a text message that said, quote, "Sure, you still love whores"?
Yes, something like that, yep.
And do you recall what your response was to that?
I think I did like an LOL or something like that back to her, and like...
Meanwhile, Nikki was trying her best to enjoy the night despite Doug's absence. She was singing, dancing, and drinking, trying to keep up the energy.
She was interacting with the bartender, some other guy at the bar.
Was there music at this location?
Yes, there was a live band.
Was anyone dancing?
Yeah, after we were outside, after we left the outside bar area, we went inside to where the girls danced, and I kind of watched their purses.
Okay. So was Nikki one of the girls dancing?
Yes.
Did she appear upset at that point in time?
No, she didn't appear upset.
But inside, she was growing more and more irritated. She'd imagined a fun night out with Doug, a chance for them to reconnect, but instead, she felt abandoned. When Nikki tried calling Doug directly, he didn't pick up. Her frustration only grew when she saw that Doug answered a call from one of his friends.
She just was, wondering why. Or I could tell she was just baffled as to why he answered Angela's phone call and not hers.
Did she seem upset at this point?
Yes, she did.
Is this the first time during your whole evening together with Nikki that she appeared upset?
That is.
This stung. Why was he willing to talk to her, but not to her? By now, Doug had been gone for over an hour, and Nikki's patience was wearing thin.
She was mad. She was walking. She was trying to get her to tell us where she was. I thought maybe if I was talking to her, That said to Doug that maybe she would let me know where she was and let us come pick her up so she's not just wandering the streets.
Yeah.
This wasn't the night out she had envisioned. As Doug's friends started making plans to move on to yet another bar, they noticed Nikki's mood had soured. Still, they invited her to join them. But Nikki suddenly walked off down the street, clearly upset. Sensing things had gone too far, Doug's friend Aaron Kolinsky quickly ran after her, trying to convince her to come back.
Nikki, basically, decided that, she didn't want to have any of it, and she just made a rash decision and decided to run off.
Didn't want to have any of it?
Yeah, she just wanted to, seemed like she just wanted to disconnect and take control of her own night and make sure she got home by herself. Or
So what did she do?
She walked out of the sardine can, the outside bar, onto the street.
It was clear that what started as a fun night had taken a turn for the worst.
And then when you got there, Aaron told you she took off walking. Did he say, I know what you're saying was her emotional state, but what did Aaron tell you was her emotional state?
That's, he didn't give into much detail, just said she was upset.
Okay.
And he said, even by text, he said that he tried to get her to stop, but she just kept on going.
Nikki left the sardine can, and at the same time, Doug and Greg had finally decided to leave the watering hole.
I asked Doug for the phone because she was mad at him, so I thought maybe if I talked to her, I could calm her down and have her stop walking off in the middle of nowhere.
How long did you talk to her?
In a few minutes, and then she hung up.
Okay.
When Doug finally arrived at the sardine can around 1 a.m., the atmosphere had shifted.
By the time we got there, they were all gone.
Yeah.
The people that you went to be with, that you hung out with all night, were actually gone.
They were gone by the time we got there.
Yes.
Okay.
The bar was still buzzing, but Doug had only one thing on his mind: finding Nikki. He started asking everyone if they had seen her, all while trying to call her himself.
Well, I talked to her at 12:13, 12:25, and 12:36 is when it ended. So at 12:30, you talked to her for like 4 minutes. That must have been the phone call you were talking to her on. I tried her a whole bunch of times after that.
Okay. So then,
She didn't answer. It goes straight to voicemail.
somebody said that she was walking south on Maple.
That's where Aaron had last seen her. That's, as far as I know, he was the last one to have seen her.
Did you see her walking?
No.
But each call went straight to voicemail. By then, Nikki's phone had already been turned off.
We drove up and down the streets for a while trying to find her, and then we went back to the sardine can thinking maybe she walked back there.
Okay.
And then we asked people around the sardine can if they had seen her, and a couple people were like, is her name Nikki? And I was like, yeah, and they're like, well, she left, but, she was here.
Mm-hmm.
How long do you think you drove around looking for her?
I mean, the first time, probably 25, 30 minutes, and then we got to the sardine can, we talked to people there, and then, 15 minutes later, we drove around for another, 30, 40 minutes trying to call her, and then we came back here.
Just before 2:30 a.m., Greg decided it was time to head home. But before he does, he took some Adderall, and so did Doug.
When was it actually used?
Oh, I mean, after the sardine can.
Where were you when that happened?
In my car.
And who was with you?
Doug was.
And if you saw it, did Doug Dietrich use any Adderall?
I mean, I'm not sure. There's a chance that because of his drunkenness, I might have pressured him in to doing it, but that would be a very unusual thing for me to see. I don't think that I can recall another occasion that I ever saw Doug sniff Adderall.
Did you think that would have a counterbalance to being drunk?
I thought maybe it would help him, not be hammered drunk, that he might.
And is that the reason you were using it?
Yes.
He drove Doug back to the house, but when Doug walked in, there was an unsettling surprise. Nikki wasn't there. Doug was now deeply concerned. Doug asked Dallas, who'd been watching their son, if she could try reaching Nikki.
I said I haven't been able to get a hold of Nikki, and didn't think too much of it. I was just kind of more upset, like, why isn't she coming back at this point?
Maybe she'd have better luck since Nikki wasn't responding to him. But when Dallas tried, she got the same result. No response at all. The night that was supposed to be a carefree evening out had now taken a troubling turn.
He showed me a telephone, and he said that they had gotten in an argument, and this is kind of what it was. And he presented me the phone, and it was a conversation back and forth between a male and a female of obviously a jealousy banter.
Was the phrase something where she's responding to him, go talk to your horse?
Something of the sort, yes. I'm not sure who it came from, but the message was across, like, just go be with your horse. Yeah.
Okay. And did you indicate when you relayed this information to the police that it looked like Doug was trying to calm her down after this?
I wouldn't say that. Okay. I don't know that I've said that.
As Dallas was about to leave the house, something happened.
So what did you do next?
I was grabbing my things, and while doing so, he had asked if I had a bowl to smoke.
And what happened after that?
Just me trying to just be done with the night and kind of go, just like, okay, here, you do this, and I have to go. I really have to go. And then I proceeded to walk to the front door. I put my hand on the door handle, and he called my name out to the point of startling. I'm right when I was about to leave, and he had asked, he goes, Dallas. And I said, yes, Doug. And he goes, can you come back here? Can I hit that one more time? And I go, next time. And he's like, you're right, okay. And I opened the door, and I ran for my car.
And how did you feel at that point?
Just out of place. And I don't know, just an urge to get out of the house.
This wasn't the first time Nikki had pulled this stunt. She did the same thing with Doug last January.
There was another time she did just walk off on her own. That was in, it was like January, it was the night after, it was the night of the Arizona playoff game. Okay. And we were at the ravine watching it there. We had gone to the bar east to meet up with a bunch of friends there. And she had started freaking out on me in the bar. And then she actually hit me at the bar there and like ran out. Mm-hmm. And it was like zero, you know. And I ran out after, I was closing the tab up, and so I closed that up and I ran out after, and she was running up Limekiln there, not to the corner, there's that little auto place in the corner, and then a squad had pulled in and stopped her, and I ran up and talked to her, and she was like belligerent with the officers there, and then I ended up putting her in the back of the squad car, and I walked back to the bar. We had a cab waiting for us, and well, it was on its way, and so they stayed there and made sure. Then she got in the cab and we went home. And then I don't know what she was thinking. She was stuck in her mind, and then she just goes.
Doug managed to get about 3 hours of restless sleep before he was jolted awake by the baby's cries from the bassinet. It was feeding time, and as he rubbed the sleep from his eyes, the reality hit him. Nikki was still nowhere to be seen. He quickly realized that whatever had happened last night wasn't just a misunderstanding. Something was wrong, and Nikki still hadn't come home.
Feeling like shit, and then not wondering. I was thinking she went off with another guy, whatever. All this shit going through my mind. And
did you at any time think about getting out and going looking for her?
With the baby needing his attention, Doug's worry started to mix with frustration and fear. He couldn't ignore the feeling that something was seriously off.
Who are her besties? Who's her best gal pals? Or guy friends?
Pretty much her sister in Dallas.
Okay.
Her sister is Heather, 6 years younger than Nicole.
I had received a Facebook message from Doug. Say roughly around 1 or 2 o'clock that day. I was at work, and he had asked me if I had seen my sister or talked to her, and I said no. So I immediately tried calling her, and her phone was off, and we had messages back and forth, seeing if we could come to a conclusion to find her.
You said you got a Facebook message from Doug?
Correct.
Was that the typical way that you would communicate with Doug, or?
I normally wouldn't communicate with Doug. We've never really talked before that.
Did Doug have your phone number that you were
No.
aware of? Perhaps explains the Facebook message.
Correct.
With Heather's help, Doug got into Nikki's Google account to track her location history. Despite his mounting worry over Nikki's disappearance, Doug couldn't ignore the pounding hangover that had set in.
What do you think happened, or where do you think she may have gone? Any idea?
To be honest, I don't know. I think she just could have just walked on. I think she might have went to another bar. That's what her sister Heather thought too. That's why we were gonna maybe go check some other bars.
Because there was still bar time left.
Yeah,
it wasn't closing time.
Yep, it was like 12:30ish, So she's in that mode. She's go. Maybe she went to the next bar. But walking that way, I don't know.
He remembered how Nikki matched him drink for drink during the concert. Part of him hoped she was just sleeping it off somewhere, but as the hours ticked by, that seemed less and less likely. By 4:30 p.m., Doug's nervousness had grown too strong to ignore. He decided it was time to call the police and report Nikki missing.
Brown County Public Safety, this is Therese.
Yes. How do I go about, missing persons?
Are you wanting to report a missing person?
Yes.
Okay, where are they missing from?
Last seen from corner of Howard and Maple Street, up the sardine can.
Okay.
Last night.
Okay.
And walking south on Maple Street through a friend.
Okay, and who's missing?
It's my girlfriend, and she does live with me, and she's never done this before.
What's her name?
Nicole VanderHeyden.
And does she live with you?
Yes.
And where was she last seen?
We're at the sardine can, and down, I think it's on the corner of Howard and South Maple, or Maple.
On Broadway there?
Yeah, just off of Broadway.
Okay.
And then she was walking south on Maple from there. I was en route in a different car to go down there.
Do you know what she was last seen wearing?
Yeah, she had black and gray striped, horizontal stripe on top.
Okay.
And with black pants, black like capri pants, and gray high heel shoes.
Okay. Any jewelry or anything?
No.
And what's your name?
Doug.
Last name?
Detrie. D-E-T-R-I-E.
So she was on foot?
Yes.
No idea where she might go?
No idea. I called some friends.
Does she have a cell phone with her or anything?
Yeah, and it's been off since last night.
Okay.
So it goes right to voicemail.
Can you wait there for an officer? Do you
Yeah, how long would it be?
I'm not sure, but I think it's important that you report her missing.
Yes.
When the officer arrived, Doug was questioned for the next 2 hours about everything that had happened the previous night. Doug didn't hold anything back, recounting the evening in detail and even showing the officer his phone to verify his timeline and back up his story.
Do you suspect any foul play? If so, why?
Just, I don't know. I don't suspect it, but just the area she walked in, definitely don't like.
Okay.
A tall blonde walking down the street in the middle of the night in that area is not. I mean, I really wouldn't want to walk down there myself.
I mean, she's definitely a pretty young lady, type thing. I mean, a guy's gonna turn his head if he's driving a car or walking, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
But there was something Doug didn't know, something the police was already aware of before they even arrived at his home. Nikki had already been found.
This body that was found down the street, I don't think it's been 100% identified as her, but there's a lot of similarities.
What do you mean a lot of similarities?
The physical description, height, blonde, belly button ring.
What happened?
Well, I don't know.
That's what we're trying to figure out here.
That's what we don't know.
Earlier that day, just 3 miles away from Doug and Nikki's home, a local farmer had been working out in his field. What he discovered was something no one should ever have to see: a body, lifeless and cold, lying in the field.
Yeah,
got to the edge of where we had already worked and just stepped into the grass along the outside, and I just tossed it. And then, I don't know what made me go another step, and then I looked over the hill and saw something that I thought it was a dead deer.
It was the body of a deceased woman. The farmer's discovery was the beginning of a tragedy that would soon turn Doug's world upside down. By the time the detective finished interviewing Doug about the previous night, both his and Nikki's families had arrived at the house. They were ready to coordinate a search for Nikki, determined to find her and bring her home. The house was buzzing with activity as everyone tried to figure out the best places to look.
Shortly after you arrived at Doug's, did you learn some additional information about someone's body being found?
Yes. I don't remember exactly who sent me a message. This was right before we were going to go out and look for her. We saw on the news that there had been a body found in Bellevue. We prayed that it wasn't her.
A body had been found in a field. The realization hit hard, and suddenly the search took on a new, darker meaning. Nicole was found face down in the field, wearing only her socks.
The boys were further that way from me. He said, is that a dead deer down there? And they were looking at it different. From the angle they were at, they could see perfect. They said, no, that's a body. And then I told them to get the hell out of there.
She had been beaten so severely that dental records were needed to confirm her identity.
Well, I was kind of shocked, but I thought, I just said, get the hell out of here. You don't need to be seeing that.
Okay, and what did you then do, sir?
I dialed 911. And the officer said to walk away. And then I didn't get as far as the lane, and he was in the yard already, and then I took him back to where he could look at it. And he asked me if I touched anything, and I said no. Then he said to go back by the vehicle.
The details that emerged were horrifying.
Was there any other details you guys know?
No.
How what happened, possibly happened?
No. Like I said, I don't even know 100%, that it's her.
Please not. Just the way they said it on the news, I don't know, a gruesome discovery. You've got to be kidding.
Well, that's the news looking for viewers,
Yes.
A forensic pathologist later determined that Nikki had suffered a total of 241 wounds. The autopsy also revealed something even more harrowing. Nikki had been the victim of a vicious carnal attack. But despite the grim findings, it wasn't until the next morning that the first clue would come to light. The following morning, as Sheriff's Deputy Nicholas was driving home from the police station, he spotted something that hadn't been noticed before.
Yeah, at first I thought it was what appeared to be a dead animal on the right side of the road, heading up the ramp onto 172 westbound. When I got closer, I noticed it was what appeared to be a pile of clothes or a clothing item on the right side of the road.
It turned out that the sheriff's deputy was right about what he saw. He had spotted a pile of clothing, Nikki's clothing, discarded in a field. Most of the items were covered in blood.
Exhibit number 31 is now being shown on the screen, is that correct?
Yes.
And can you describe what's being depicted now?
Yes, that is a lanyard with a lanyard label of Nicole VanderHeyden with her name on it.
And item exhibit number 32 is now being depicted, correct?
Yes, that would be a purse. And that was found near the lanyard.
Okay.
The next day, May 23rd, brought another crucial development. The murder weapon was discovered, a cable used to strangle Nikki. The cable was found in the front yard of Doug's neighbor, Matthew Peterson.
Not immediately. I did proceed to begin mowing my lawn, and in the very first pass of mowing my lawn close to the curb, I heard a click. It was sounded like my blade of my lawnmower hitting something, and I shut my lawnmower off and found a piece of cord that I picked up and examined and then set aside.
This piece of evidence would be key in moving the investigation forward, revealing more about the night's events and who might be involved. At first, Matthew Peterson thought the blood in his yard and on the street might have come from an animal hit by a car.
I picked it up and it looked a lot like the cords running along my lawnmower. So I initially thought that something had fallen off of my lawnmower. I inspected my lawnmower, tried to start it. It started just fine. At that point, I decided that the cord was a piece of garbage or something that had flown off of somebody's vehicle, and I just set it on the curb to pick up later, and I subsequently forgot to pick it up and proceeded to mow my lawn.
But when he heard about Nikki's disappearance and murder, he realized it might be something much more sinister.
My wife called me at work just as I was about to end the day and said that that there had been news reports that it had been Nicole VanderHeyden's body that was found in a couple miles from our house, and we decided that that was the appropriate time to call.
And did you know Nicole VanderHeyden?
I had waved to her from across the street numerous times. I don't know that I ever formally met her.
A forensic examination later confirmed that the blood on the ground and on the cable was indeed Nikki's. Doug quickly became the primary suspect. He had admitted to arguing with Nikki just before her death. Interviews with friends and family revealed that their relationship had been rocky lately. Doug had even mentioned to his mother that he was considering asking Nikki and her kids to move out. To make matters worse, the crime scene and murder weapon were found right outside Doug's house. During a search of his home, the police discovered even more alarming evidence. There was what appeared to be blood on the garage floor, inside Nikki's car, and on a pair of Doug's old shoes. The police had more than enough reason to arrest Doug on suspicion of murder. They showed up at his doorstep to make the arrest.
Right now I'm going to be taking you into custody. I'll be handcuffing you. I'll explain all that to you in a bit, and transporting you down to the sheriff's department. Okay?
Okay.
So just be cooperative with me,
all right,
and we'll roll it that way.
Wow, okay.
All right. I'm going to get you down there, and we'll talk down there, and I'll kind of explain to you what's going on. I'm a decent guy.
Okay, I'm a decent guy too.
I get that. I'm sure you are. You seem like a real nice guy.
Before officially charging Doug with murder, the police decided to wait for the results of forensic testing. During this time, Doug sat in jail for 18 days, missing Nikki's funeral. Although the police were sure they had the right person, everything changed when the lab results came back. Doug's DNA was not found on the cord used to strangle Nikki or on her neck. It also didn't match any of the blood found at his home. The blood on Doug's shoes was from a turkey hunting trip. The blood in Nikki's car belonged to one of her children, and the blood on the garage floor turned out to be just a dark stain. While this new information didn't clear Doug of all suspicion, it didn't provide enough evidence to charge him either. As a result, Doug was released from jail. This DNA profile didn't match Doug, but instead belonged to an unknown male. When this DNA profile was entered into the system, it matched 38-year-old George Burch from Virginia, a man with a violent criminal history. Police soon learned that George Burch had recently moved to Green Bay. His past was filled with criminal activity, including theft and violence. Standing 6'7" and weighing 270 pounds, George had arrived in Green Bay about 3 months before Nikki's murder. An old friend, Ed Jackson, had let George live with him and his wife. George also used his 1999 red Chevy Blazer. Several weeks after Nikki's murder, while Doug was still in jail, Green Bay officers were called to Ed Jackson's house on June 8th. The call was about an alleged auto theft involving that same red Chevy Blazer.
About 7:30 a.m. I was dispatched to an auto theft complaint.
You know the location of the auto theft complaint?
912 South Greenwood Ave.
And when you arrived on scene, what did you do?
I spoke with complainant, Edward Jackson.
About what?
One of his vehicles was stolen overnight, apparently.
It turned out that the red Chevy Blazer wasn't just involved in an auto theft. It had also been linked to a hit and run and was found completely torched, burned out from a fire. The interior was reduced to ashes and melted seats. To clear himself of any suspicion and prove he had nothing to do with the crimes, George agreed to let the police take his cell phone. This was his way of showing that he was innocent and had nothing to hide.
Gave us permission to look at his text messages. And at that point, I asked him if I could just take his phone to the department, have one of our analysts download the information off the phone just to make it easier to search through all the information.
Ultimately, the police couldn't figure out exactly what happened to the Blazer. Even though they suspected George was behind both the hit and run and the vehicle fire, they didn't have enough evidence to prove it. They couldn't make an arrest or file any charges related to the Blazer. However, all the data from George's cell phone was still in police custody. When investigators later discovered George's DNA on Nikki's sock, they hoped the phone data might help track his whereabouts on the night of Nikki's murder. They examined his location data from the morning of May 21st, and what they found was startling. The data provided crucial insights into George's movements and connections to the crime scene, giving the investigation a fresh lead. The evidence was damning. George's cell phone data showed he had been at a bar next to the sardine can on the night of the murder. He was also tracked outside Nikki's home just after 3 a.m. The data revealed he was at the field where her body was found and at the spot where her clothes were discarded. Also, his search history was undeniably a cause for concern. On September 7, 2016, George was arrested for Nikki's murder. George, who had a history of frequent run-ins with the law, knew better than to talk to detectives without a lawyer present. He maintained his innocence up until his trial in 2018.
The reason you're here is in reference to a homicide investigation into Nicole VanderHeyden. Okay? So, is this something that you want to talk to me about?
Yes, sir.
What's that? You don't want to talk to me about that? So if I read you your Miranda rights, you don't want to talk to me?
Yes, I would prefer a lawyer.
Okay.
Surprisingly, George and his defense team didn't try to discredit much of the prosecution's evidence. Instead, they admitted George was at all the critical locations around the morning of Nikki's murder. They even acknowledged that his DNA was found on Nikki's body and her clothes. The real shock came when George took the stand in his own defense. He claimed to have a story that would explain everything and insisted he knew who the real killer was. He began his testimony by stating that he met Nikki in the early morning hours at his favorite bar, Richard Cranium's.
I was in the bar area, went out before, had a cigarette, came back and standing there, and I don't know if I was watching TV or what it was or talking amongst friends around me, but I noticed there was a fairly attractive blonde woman standing next to me.
What was she doing?
I believe she was getting a drink. I'm not sure. I just, there's a couple people over here and she was over here, and I ended up started talking to her, just making conversation.
Okay, so you noticed her and started talking to her?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember, do you remember if you approached her, if she approached you? I guess kind of describe for us as best as you can.
I just went to the side and saw that she was standing, and she didn't seem to be with anybody. She was by herself, and I just kind of struck up a conversation. She was right in the vicinity, right next to me.
Did you see her walk in with anybody?
No.
Did you see her walk in?
I don't remember her walking, her coming in or where she came in, because you can come in through the front or the back, and I just remember looking over, and she was standing close to my area at the bar.
You struck up a conversation?
Yes, sir.
What kind of stuff were you guys talking about?
First started, she said that it didn't sound like I was from here. I don't see myself as having an accent, but a lot of people do. And she just asked me where I was from, and started from there. Just talked about in general how I'd moved here and everything. Talked about my past, or just in general, tell her things about myself, trying to get to know each other.
At any point when you were talking with her, did anybody arrive that seemed to be with her?
No. We sat there and talked for a while.
Did you guys talk about relationships?
We both expressed that we had been through marriages. I told her I had kids. She told me she had kids from marriages. And she was, I don't remember if she said separated or divorced. I told her that I was going through the current situation myself.
And while you were interacting with Nicole, did you continue to drink?
Yes, sir.
Did she continue to drink?
Yes, sir.
How would you describe her demeanor? I mean, was she like falling down drunk or what?
No, we standing there talking, having a conversation. I could understand everything she was saying. She wasn't sloppy drunk or anything like that. I didn't notice her stumble or anything.
Richard Craniums was located just a half-mile south of the sardine can, in the direction Nikki had last been seen walking by Doug's friends.
Well, I moved a little closer to her, just talking, laughing, joking, giggling, light touch here or there, just things that you can pretty much tell if someone's kind of into you, I guess would be the best way to put it.
On this particular night, is that what happened? They called last call?
Yes, sir.
You had another drink?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember if Nicole had another drink?
I don't remember if she was finishing the one she had or if she got another one. I don't recall. She could have, but like I said, I don't remember.
What happened after that?
We proceeded to leave through the back.
So you guys left together?
Yes, sir. I invited her back to my place.
She gave you the impression that she agreed to that?
Yes, sir. She walked to my vehicle. I opened the passenger's door. She got in the passenger's door. I shut the door, went around to the driver's side, and got in my Blazer.
Then what happened?
We went back to my house right down the street.
According to George, when he and Nikki walked to his place, one of his roommates was still awake and sitting in the living room. This, he said, threatened to kill the mood. So Nikki suggested they head over to her house instead. George claimed that Nikki directed him as he drove the red Chevy Blazer to her place, the same Chevy that would later be destroyed in a fire. When they arrived at Nikki's house, George said they could tell someone was inside. To avoid drawing attention, they decided to park in front of Nikki's neighbor's house.
She said there was a light on and she thought the babysitter was still up.
So you never went inside the residence?
No, sir. I've never been in the residence.
She had you pull over on the side of the road?
The right side of the road, yes, sir.
You did pull over?
Yes, sir.
What happened after that?
We sat there and talked for a few minutes.
Okay. What happened after that?
Started.
And at this point, you were still in the driver's seat?
Yes, sir.
She was still in the front passenger seat?
Yes, sir.
According to George's location data, he and Nikki would have arrived at her house just about a minute after Doug arrived and the babysitter left.
I'm not certain, but I felt like I was rustled or something, I was hit or something made me aware of my surroundings all of a sudden, and I remember waking up and going, what in the hell?
We weren't there. I mean, what were you perceiving as you were waking up?
At first I didn't know what was going on. I looked down and I'm laying on the ground and I was a little groggy, trying to kind of put two together what the hell was going on.
Did you stand up right away?
No, not at first.
What happened at first?
I kind of grabbed my pants and went to kind of move, and that's when I pretty much noticed something was going on behind me.
Did you immediately look behind you, or I guess what caused you to look behind you?
I felt something behind me, something kind of, I wouldn't say hit me, but nudged me, but made me aware that I was not the only person there.
And you were still kind of gathering your senses at this point?
Yes, sir. It was kind of, I don't want to say groggy, but kind of hazy, I guess, a little bit, kind of still at the point where I don't know what's going on. Like I don't know the environment. I don't know how I get to this point. I don't just naturally wake up with my pants around my ankles normally.
George claimed that because it was so dark and the man was standing behind him, he couldn't see the person's face.
Then I was instructed to move to the back end of the vehicle.
What do you mean?
I was told to pretty much don't think about doing anything stupid and move myself to the back of where the Blazer was, to the rear of the Blazer.
By the time you were told to move towards the back of the Blazer, had you had a chance to take in your surroundings?
Pretty much so. close immediate area.
What do you mean when you said you were considering or thinking about your options?
If there was any way I could remove myself from the situation, to be completely honest, if there's anything I could do to get out of harm's way.
What types of things did you consider?
Running, screaming.
It was then he saw Nikki lying on the ground.
Once my attention got to that area, I looked closer and I realized that it was Nicole laying there.
Did you know if she was alive or dead at that point?
I didn't know if she was alive.
George claimed that the gunman then forced him to place Nikki's body into the back seat of the Blazer. After that, he said he was instructed to get back into the driver's seat while the man sat in the back with a gun pointed at him.
You have your interior lights, and the interior lights were bright enough that I could actually see someone. And I could see it, the reflection in the mirror, because I couldn't physically turn around and look at him.
And again, at that point, did you know who that individual was?
Never seen him before in my life.
Do you know who that individual is now?
Now I do.
Who was it?
It was Doug Dietrich.
Although George said he had no idea who it was at the time, he claimed he was now 100% confident that Doug Dietrich was the man holding him at gunpoint. According to George, Doug instructed him to drive down dark roads until they reached a field. Once there, George said he was forced to carry Nikki's body to the edge of the field. Even though George made his exit in low gear, driving at about 5 miles per hour, he claimed that Doug never shot at him as he fled. But as George drove home, he said he realized all of Nikki's clothing and belongings were still in the truck.
I remember looking over and seeing some stuff that was hers sitting in the vehicle.
Do you remember if this stuff was in the front or the back seat?
I don't remember exactly where it all was. I knew that it was multiple of things. It wasn't just like one item.
Instead of calling the police immediately to report what had happened, George decided not to tell anyone.
I didn't even know who to talk to. How do you have a conversation with someone about something like that? Like, what do you say? I grew up an only child, and I've experienced a lot of things that sometimes you just keep them inside. And it just, now I see that it's completely wrong, and I should have said something or should have done something. But in the time, I kind of imploded and kept everything inside.
Help me understand this, George. Why would you not call the cops?
I was scared to speak to the cops.
Why?
I was on probation.
What were you on probation for?
Grand larceny.
What's that?
It's pretty much simple theft.
So you were on probation for theft of property.
Yes, sir.
And that played into why you didn't speak to the cops?
Yes, sir.
Well, what would have happened? I mean, what were you afraid of?
5 years in prison. My suspended time was like this is roughly about 5 years.
Why didn't you tell Ed?
I honestly don't. I don't know why I didn't say anything. I don't know if it was just where I'm from. You don't talk. You don't tell about things you've seen. You don't tell on people. People get killed all the time where I'm from for that. And I feared for my own safety if I would have ever said anything, because like I said, where I'm from, it happens all the time. People go to tell on people and tell things and they end up dead. They never make it to court. They never make it anywhere. They find them dead.
The following day, George said he woke up and went on a planned fishing trip with a friend, Ed Jackson. He didn't mention anything about the night's events, not to his friend or anyone else, until he spoke with lawyers after his arrest. It became clear to the prosecution that Doug had crafted a story to fit with the physical evidence presented to the jury. Now it was their job to show how George's narrative, while clever and imaginative, was still full of holes.
Did Nicole tell you that she had a young baby at home, that she was a nursing mother?
I believe she had said something about it. The nursing part, I'm not sure. I do believe she said she had a child because she had mentioned to me that she had a babysitter.
I thought she told you that the kids were out of town with their dad.
I said those two, but I also said when we got there, the light was on. She said the babysitter was up.
Why would that be a problem? Why wouldn't you just ask the babysitter to go home and go inside?
Sir, I don't know. I've never been in her house. I don't know her babysitter.
The prosecutor started to dismantle his narrative. Not only had George crafted a narrative to prove his innocence, but he was also now accusing Doug of being the real murderer. George's defense heavily relied on the fact that Doug had been the detective's original primary suspect and had even been arrested for the crime. Fortunately for the prosecution, they discovered surprising data while preparing for George's trial. While reviewing footage of Doug's original police interviews, they noticed he wore a Fitbit on his wrist.
I did not observe any sort of scratches, marks of any sort on his arms or hands. He was wearing like a bright colored polo shirt. I guess describe it as like an aqua or royal blue polo shirt with cargo shorts. I didn't observe anything on his legs between his knees and his socks that he was wearing. I didn't observe any injuries on him.
The device continuously measures physical activity and could potentially validate Doug's alibi, and it did. After downloading data from George's tracking app and analyzing his activity between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. on the morning of the murder, the data supported Doug's alibi. Between those hours, Doug's tracker registered only 12 steps, consistent with bathroom trips or restless sleep. These 12 steps were crucial as they proved Doug hadn't removed the Fitbit during the murder. So, if it wasn't Doug, there was only one conclusion. George Burch was lying. The prosecution focused on the overwhelming evidence against George, aiming to dismantle his claims and prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt.
Who has been proven to have been with Nikki in the last hours of her life on May 21st, 2016, in those early morning hours? Who has been proven unequivocally to have been with her in her last moments?
His story is completely absurd and difficult to digest. His story was full of holes, and with his own statement, he had dug a hole that he can't climb out of. But there was still one more piece of evidence that completely disproved George's testimony. If George's story were true, Nikki would have been murdered after her clothes were already taken off, but the evidence proved otherwise. After deliberating for about 3 hours, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, George Stephen Burch, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, is charged in the information.
George Burch was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Nicole's 2 oldest children now live with their biological father, while their infant son Dylan is being raised by Doug. In the aftermath of George Burch's conviction, another chapter unfolded, revealing just how deeply the tragedy had embedded itself into the lives of those involved.
Heather, how old are you?
I'm 27.
And do you live in the Brown County area?
Yes, I do.
9 months after Nicole's murder, her sister Heather, who had been staying with Doug to help care for Dylan, faced a terrifying encounter just like her sister.
The typical way that you would communicate with Doug, or
I normally wouldn't communicate with Doug. We've never really talked before that.
In February 2017, Heather and Doug attended a birthday party at a tavern in Alouez. While driving to the location, Doug inappropriately touched her leg. When she asked him to stop, Doug became angry. He drove recklessly, speeding and refusing to let her out despite her pleas. At one point, he even ran a stoplight. She was only able to escape after kicking the windshield, forcing Doug to stop. Doug, who had once been the prime suspect, found himself in legal trouble again, not for murder, but for reckless endangerment and false imprisonment. Doug's actions, though not as heinous as George's, showed that the darkness of that night had far-reaching consequences. The case of Nicole VanderHeyden is more than just a story of a crime solved. It's a sobering look at how violence can ripple through lives, altering them in ways that are both expected and unexpected. While George Burch will never walk free again, Doug's actions serve as a reminder that the wounds left by such violence don't heal easily. The scars remain, and sometimes they lead to even more pain. Thank you for being a part of this journey into one of the most complex and haunting cases we've ever covered. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Tap the notification bell to stay updated on the latest true crime stories.